A proud sponsor of today's symposium, the Institute for Human Ecology at the Catholic University of America is the nation's leading academic institute committed to increasing scientific understanding of the economic, cultural, and social conditions vital for human flourishing. Drawing on the Catholic intellectual tradition, the mission of the Institute for Human Ecology is to educate students, sponsor multidisciplinary and social scientific research, advise church leadership and policymakers, and organize symposia, conferences, and lectures for the Academy and the public square. For more information about Institute for Human Ecology events and programs, you can visit their website at the Catholic University of America. And really, the Institute for Human Ecology is, if you're not already familiar with them, they really are doing cool things. They help to organize this symposium, and they've helped to organize symposia and conferences and conversations about some of the most important things that are happening right now in the church, and especially the intersection between church and culture. So thank you, Institute for Human Ecology, for your sponsorship of this event. Great. As I said, the person who I'm going to introduce is familiar to many of you, and if he's not familiar to you, his work has no doubt resonated deeply in your own work and in your own ministry, because Dr. David Byers is really the author and editor of the 1978 U.S. Bishop's Statement on Persons with Disabilities, and one of the persons who helped to really get the National Catholic Partnership for Disabilities off the ground. So much of his work laid the ground for much of the ministry that many of you all are involved in, and the work that the NCPD does now. He's also a diehard Nats fan, so he's basking in the afterglow of World Series victory. And he's a Maryland basketball fan. He says Maryland basketball is right now rated 7 in the country, but they haven't played any games yet. So we will see how that goes. But for now, please help me welcome Dr. David Byers.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, we're going to start this morning with a quiz. This is a school, so there has to be a quiz. And here's the question. Why was Mozart late for his music lesson? Why did he miss his music lesson? It wasn't because he was late. It's because his teacher was hiding. Save your groans. The second one is worse. What do you get when the police van collides with the truck carrying plaster of Paris? 10 hardened criminals. I borrowed the first one from, I'm in a barbershop chorus, and our director likes to intersperse our songs with humor. He's the one that came up with the Mozart one. Okay, it's terribly risky to quote something you wrote over 40 years ago. Times change, tastes change. I'm going to take the chance, though, for 2 reasons. First, I believe the statement still rings true. Second, it retains its power to inform and animate ministry with people with disabilities. Now, here's the quotation, which appears in the 3rd paragraph of the Pastoral Statement in 1978. That better? Okay. The 1978 USCCB Pastoral Statement, quote, "No acts of charity or justice towards our brothers and sisters with disabilities can be of lasting value unless our actions are informed by a sincere and understanding love that affirms the common humanity underlying all distinction," unquote. Now that sounds a lot like what we just heard from Miguel. Well, it should. If my presentation didn't dovetail in many ways with his, I would be in big trouble. There is an important distinction, though. Speaking as a theologian, Miguel emphasizes what we must believe, what we must intellectually embrace about people with disabilities. The bishop's publication, on the other hand, is labeled a pastoral statement. It stresses how we must feel towards people with disabilities, offering, quote, a sincere and understanding love. The Invisible Curtain, which is the title of the talk, the invisible curtain is my metaphor for the divide often subtle, between typical people, quotation marks, typical people, and people with clear physical and/or mental differences. All lives are a strand of interwoven threads: the thread of marriage and children, the thread of faith, the thread of growth, the thread of struggle and recovery from struggle. Glancing back over what is becoming a rather long life, one of the strongest threads for me has been handling the everyday sense of difference that I sometimes, not always as we shall see, that I sometimes share with folks with disabilities. That sharing began with my first breath. I was born with spina bifida in October 1941 and underwent surgery 8 days later in New York. It was a risky operation in those years, with just one chance in 100 of success, but it was in fact successful. The gap in my lower spine was closed, the flow of cerebrospinal fluid to my head was halted, and the only permanent effect was damage to the nerves controlling my right leg, which, as you can see, still works. So I don't qualify as disabled. I don't fit the definition. I'm close enough, though, to be frequently aware of being different from typical people. That happens in simple ways. As a child, for example, being unable to keep up. As an adult, limping into rooms full of strangers. Routine, everyday things that, in the moment, carry an emotional and psychological punch and whose effects snowball over time. This awareness, this thread in my own life, affected the composition of the pastoral statement. My journey, in one sense, can be imagined as a journey toward the pastoral statement. Many people could have written the introductory paragraphs, but no one who had not brushed up against the invisible curtain. My association with the statement happened quite by accident. I joined the staff of the USCCB in March 1978. A committee of people with disabilities and their advocates had been meeting for some time and were struggling to draft a hard-hitting document that the bishops would approve and publish. This was 12 years before passage of the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, so much of the official acceptance of disability rights we now enjoy still lay in the future. Within the church itself, recognition of the need for greater accessibility to buildings, to the sacraments, to religious education was spotty at best. A committee basing itself upon the notion of Christian community and on Catholic social teaching was exploring new territory, tugging on the bishop's sleeve, saying, "Hey, look here. Here's part of the body of Christ you seem to be missing." The fact that we're discussing the statement today shows that the committee did its job. And I might add, I was at USCCB for 30 years and worked on a number of statements on quite a range of subjects. Of all those statements, this is the one that's still alive. And it's not alive because of me, it's alive because of you. Because it found a constituency, and that constituency has remained active in the intervening 40 years. The membership of the committee included Paul Sauerland, who was blind, Mike Sullivan, a wild-haired Irishman with CP, a retired Marine colonel, one auxiliary bishop, a brother, 2 priests, and 3 sisters active in the cause, and a few other people with and without disabilities. The bishops approved the pastoral statement unanimously that November, so 6 months later, affirming the rightful place of people with disabilities in both society and the church. Now, I noted a few minutes ago that the invisible curtain is a subtle reality, more like an instinct or an attitude than a theater curtain pulled aside to reveal a dramatic scene. One can see through it front to back or back to front. It seems easy enough to set aside, and indeed I've met empathic women and men who can dissolve the curtain with a warm smile. Still, I wonder if for most people it ever truly evaporates, especially those who never notice it because they refuse to look. There are endless degrees of disability and variation in the visibility of variation in the visibility of disability. It's hard to say, that affect the perception of the curtain. It is so evanescent, indeed, that I've lived at different times on both sides, and I'm sure that's true for other people in the room. In the experience I've already mentioned, especially those from childhood, I certainly felt that I was behind the curtain looking out. While working on the pastoral statement, on the other hand, I was clearly on the outside looking in, though with an unusually close-up view. For a couple of years, I belonged to a faith and light community in a neighboring parish, in part to gauge the wisdom of starting one in my own parish. It took the whole first year to get comfortable with people who, in some cases, were entirely nonverbal. But I grew glad to see them at monthly meetings, and they became a mysterious but definite source of quiet joy. The more often one steps through the curtain, the easier it gets to navigate. Now, my own experience, no matter its impact on the pastoral statement, is not necessarily typical or generalizable. Still, I believe the curtain is real, that it carries a powerful charge, and that its existence profoundly influences ministry with people with disabilities. For 6 years after I retired from the USCCB, I volunteered as head of our ministry at Blessed Sacrament. That's the parish I just referred to. We had many advantages. The pastor was supportive, even hiring part-time ministry staff. We did many good things, such as sponsoring a program called Young Catholics with Disabilities, whose members went on monthly outings to the movies, a bowling alley, a skating rink, or even an NBA game in one case. We advised the Parish School of Religion on students with special needs, invited all parishioners to an annual inclusion mass, maintained our own Facebook page, even organized multi-parish workshops with expert speakers on employment, SSI, and housing. In the end, though, I was underwhelmed, not overwhelmed, but underwhelmed with the results of our efforts. Even with every advantage, the 6 members of the organizing committee and its staff were unable to bring about a real embrace of parishioners with disabilities. They remain special, quote unquote, special in a negative sense, outside the parish mainstream. Despite constant efforts, we could not expand our original base of volunteers, even by appealing to family members. We could not enlist parish staff in our cause. Most importantly, we could not interest rank and file parishioners in creating a more inclusive worshiping community. It was not a priority, and we could not make it one. Now, that's a familiar story. The pastoral statement notes, and here I quote again, "Few of us would admit to being prejudiced against people with disabilities. We bear them no ill will and do not knowingly seek to abrogate their rights. Yet people with disabilities are visibly, sometimes bluntly different from the norm, and we react to this difference. Even if we do not look down upon them, we tend all too often to think of them as somehow apart, not completely one of us. So it is at Blessed Sacrament, and I believe in most parishes across the country." Now, this anecdote illustrates what I mean when I say the invisible curtain is a barrier of difference. I would also suggest that it's a barrier of discomfort and even of fear. Especially these days, many people find it difficult to deal with individuals with whom they disagree on political or religious grounds, or whom they simply don't like. How much more emotionally complex is it to relate to individuals whom we are supposed to accept, support, and assist, but can't walk, or can't see us, or don't understand what we're saying, or act out disruptively? People with obvious disabilities threaten to haul us out of our comfort zone, to make us feel embarrassed and inadequate. On an unconscious level, they may also threaten our sense of health and vigor, and make our own vulnerability to serious disability too clear. Rather than deal with such feelings, it's easier to maintain an insulating distance. Now, these are hardly revelations for those in the ministry, especially veterans. Many could tell stories that would top any of my experiences. So what is to be done? Because disabilities vary so greatly both in nature and severity, there can be no simple answer. However, acknowledging the presence of the invisible curtain suggests the focus for ministerial planning. Now let's notice again that the curtain has two sides. The way folks with disabilities feel about the programs and services offered them is perhaps as important as the general public's attitudes towards people with disabilities. Some may be uncomfortable taking part in social activities, outings, dances, whatever the diocese or parish is providing. They may rebel against being singled out to participate in a program for people with problems. Some may find their special religious education program boring and meaningless. One way to gauge whether parish and diocesan offerings are attractive is to estimate the total need and ask how many people the ministry is actually reaching. The attitude of parents and guardians often mirrors those of people with disabilities, especially if their charges are children. Parents may not want to upset the house by demanding that kids attend religious education classes or join in other parish activities. Some are highly protective and will not take the chance of exposing their charges to potentially uncomfortable situations. Even if a child or young adult reads well enough to be a lector or understands how to serve at the altar, for example, there is a risk of embarrassment or a public meltdown. Now, there's no way to steer around all these possible hazards. However, ministers can try to learn in advance what worries and attitudes they're likely to encounter and let that information guide pastoral planning. People peeping from behind the curtain may be apprehensive or needy or defiant or simply full of questions. As the anvil salesman in The Music Man says, you got to know the territory, or at least enough of the territory to form a sound strategy. The only way to gain this sort of wisdom is through personal contact, probably through a combination of parish meetings and one-on-one interviews. Much easier said than done. Once ministers step outside the invisible curtain and look around for help, they can start feeling rather lonely. Our failure to recruit volunteers at Blessed Sacrament is a common experience. I'm not aware of any other church ministry where the volunteer corps is made up so heavily of people with a close relationship to those being served. Education, work for social justice, evangelization, faith formation, all attract volunteers with no particular personal or professional ties to the cause. With disabilities, it is so often family, friends, individuals with a professional interest, or those with fond memories of children who did not survive, who step forward as ministers or advocates. They have emotionally penetrated our metaphorical curtain and made it irrelevant. They are not frightened by the curtain because they know the people on the other side are, well, just people. This suggests that the way to broaden the ministry, to get more volunteers and at the same time win warmer parish acceptance, is to make individuals aware of the curtain and invite them to approach it. For ministers on the diocesan level, this means the usual: preaching, teaching, explaining, encouraging, above all, offering and sustaining an attractive vision. Workshops, to be sure. Everyone wants more workshops. But not head workshops. but not head workshops. Every good Catholic already knows you should welcome and respect people with disabilities. The challenge is to make people comfortable doing so. That could mean including folks with disabilities in educational offerings, or including family and friends to offer witness to life with someone with a disability and to answer questions, or including person-to-person interaction. Anything to dispel the sense of strangeness and its consequent discomfort. And what about the vision thing? To quote the first President Bush, what sort of vision should we offer to engage typical people's interest? I don't think it's an approach aimed at eliciting sympathy by describing the difficulties disability brings. Nor is it inspiring tales about the heroic accomplishments people with disabilities achieve in spite of their problems, which is another form of the same appeal. Nor should the vision seek to minimize the sufferings of people with disabilities, referring to them, for example, as differently abled, quote unquote. If I can't walk as you do, it's not that I'm differently abled, it's that I'm limited in ways that I would not have chosen. All these methods of highlighting the special character of people with disabilities, it seems to me, gives their specialness a negative feel that preserves the sense of otherness and may even antagonize the audience. Instead, we might stress special ways of being human, expanding the definition of normal. It is commonplace, for example, for advocates to mention the sweet simplicity of people with Down syndrome. That's in the right direction, as long as we don't pat the down of an individual on the head with an indulgent smile. Diocesan support in the form of vision-based workshops and publications, parish visits, and personal advice should expand the volunteer stream in parishes, unless, of course, the parish is small or the pastor uninterested. If so, inter-parish cooperation might be the way forward. In either case, formal, ongoing programs like Faith and Light, and I'm sure there are many others that I'm not aware of, bring together people with and without disabilities sharing two things, their common humanity and their faith, however simple that faith may be. Creatively designed social events to which parents and guardians could invite friends who might be open to the ministry are also options. Now, what form could people's participation take? Well, the most obvious form is helping support whatever activities the parish is providing for people with disabilities. Less obvious, perhaps, but equally important is expanding the number of parishioners familiar with the ministry and happy to tell others about it. Notices in the bulletin or on the website have little effect. Announcements from the pulpit are not much better. But person-to-person invitations that expand the circle of understanding and empathy are promising, even if most parishioners remain indifferent. And again, the vision to share is not help these poor people with special needs, but draw closer to this special way of being human. Now let me leave you what I believe is the Pastoral Statement's most radical assertion. And here again I quote, "Scripture teaches us that any other commandment there may be is all summed up in this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself." That's from Romans 13:9. In his wisdom, Jesus said, as yourself. We must love others from the inside out, so to speak, accepting their difference from us in the same way that we accept our difference from them, unquote. If it's fine for me not to have an obvious disability, then maybe it's fine for others to have one. In other words, maybe I'm not the standard. Geneticists, psychologists, neuroscientists, anthropologists, and other experts talk ad nauseum about finding and defining what makes us, quote, fully human, unquote. In his talk, Miguel offered an excellent response: creation in all our variety by a loving God. I might say to the atheist, fine, leave God out of it if you must, but embrace the variety in human reality. Don't call some of us special and set us aside in order to protect your own self-image. Look hard at the curtain until it finally does disappear for you. Now, those who minister to people with disabilities, pretty much everyone in the room in one way or another, know it is a labor of love, though sometimes a lonely and frustrating one. I've always gone by two principles: stay positive, never give up. Now, I am rapidly becoming the past of disabilities ministry. You are its present and its future. Embrace it, stay positive, never give up.
Let's just help me to thank Dr. Byers not only for that talk, but for decades of friendship with people with disabilities.